Hi, I'm James Gaskin. Sorry I can't be with you today. I've had some recent health issues that prevent me from driving and doing some other things. Hopefully get better soon. I'm an assistant professor over in the Department of Information Systems in the Marriott School, and I absolutely love my job. I make video games for fun all the time. Here's my most recent one. It's called Silver 16. It's in the App Store for iPad and iPhone, iPod, and all iOS devices. Hopefully making it for Android soon. Lots of fun, retro shooter. I've also made role-playing games, strategy games, educational games, arcade games, puzzle games. For about a decade now, I've just made lots of video games, lots of fun. And as I've created these games, I've noticed that the very act of creating requires and develops a new mode of thinking, which some call design thinking. There it is, design thinking. This is a way of thinking about a problem as solvable in countless ways where each solution can be designed, and each designed solution can reshape and redesign the problem. Design thinking is a perspective that allows one to take any problem and by using whatever resources they have available to them, design a sufficient rather than optimal solution, believing that optimal is either fictional or unnecessary or just too extravagant. Design thinking is understandably a desirable attribute in management professionals. Unfortunately, it's far from common. It's also unfortunately difficult to teach in higher education. Using traditional approaches to teaching, how would you instill this new way of thinking in business and management students so that they are prepared for the wicked and unstructured problems they'll inevitably face in the workforce? My designerly approach to this problem was to have MBA students design and develop video games. Now, at first this may sound crazy, and it sort of is, and that's what a lot of the students thought. However, having facilitated many of these video game design workshops now, I've found them to be some of the most useful and memorable experiences the students engage with throughout their degree. Now, because I'm working with MBA students, and I only have 3 sessions, 3 classes to conduct the workshop, I can't teach them programming or graphic design. So I use a tool called GameMaker Studio, which I'm showing here. There's nothing on the screen really, but this is the platform. And this allows them to just drag and drop logic, give objects appearance and behavior, and orchestrate user interactions all without writing a single line of code. And I'm going to show you this in just a minute. But on the first day, it's crucial, on the first day I'm teaching this workshop, it's crucial to make the connection between video game design and management decision making. Unless the experience is grounded in management-related goals, many of the students will fail to engage, seeing the workshop as an irrelevant waste of time. Which, granted, it sounds like it is to an MBA student. Why am I making video games? But once a meaningful connection is established, they get it. Most of them get it, and you can move forward. And they have tons of fun. But once you establish some meaningful connection, students have then got to understand some of the basics of video game design. Now, this really isn't that difficult with MBA students nowadays, as most of them grew up playing video games, and many of them still do play video games. But for those who don't or haven't, I explain some of the basics, like score, lives, health, challenge, levels, interactivity, things like this, in order to at least set a groundwork for how a video game is supposed to work. Then it comes time to teach about the basics of visual application design. So we discuss what an object is, how it can have behavior, and how it can interact with other objects, and how we can give it an appearance. We discuss that an instance of an object is different from the object itself. And particular to visual applications, we discuss rooms or pages in which the instances or objects live. Now, most of this is a very new way of thinking for MBA students. So while discussing each of these points, I actually create and instantiate these things in GameMaker. So for example, let me go over to GameMaker here. I say, here's an object. We just created an object. We're going to call this object ball. And it needs an appearance. Let me go give it an appearance. So we create a sprite, edit sprite. Let's just give it a ball appearance. There's our little ball. So that is the appearance of the sprite. Let me just make it bigger for purposes today. 300, there we go. And center it. So our object ball now has a sprite, and we need to give it behavior. So on a create event, and we also need to talk about triggers now. Events are triggered by either user initiation or system initiation. So on the create event, let's just have it start moving. So I just drag and drop, which is great, at a speed of, I don't know, 10 in that direction. Oh, we need to have rooms in which the objects may live. So I create a room called room 0, and I stick the object in the room. And then we can prototype it, we can test it, and see if it works. And they love this part. This took, what, 30 seconds, and now they have a visual application that does something. Very cool. Now, explaining variables and conditional logic is a little bit trickier, as these are usually fairly unfamiliar topics for business students. I explained that a variable holds a value that could change, such as a score. The score is a variable that increases as we get points. Health is another variable that can decrease as we incur damage to our character. Conditional logic is just a way for the system or object to make decisions. If this, then A, else B. The key here is to keep it very simple. For example, if there are more than 50 balls in the room, then don't create any more balls. Let's do that. Let's see. Here we have a ball, and let's add an event and say other outside room. Let's reverse horizontal. Okay, and then create more of itself. Spawn another of yourself, ball, at your 0 and your y at a speed of 10. Let's just say, keep it simple, at a direction of, I wonder if I can do direction, and at a speed of speed. Cool. Hit OK, and test that out. Right now we haven't given any conditional logic. There's the ball. That's crazy. All right, that's wild. So now we need to add a conditional bit of logic. Let's test something. Let's test the instance count. If object ball number 50 is less than, then create another ball. Otherwise, don't do anything. And so that will only create up to 50 balls. Very cool. In order to more firmly establish these ideas in their minds, we create a non-interactive game together. One I've found to work best is just the ball bouncing around the room. When it hits the wall, it multiplies. The logic and behavior behind such a game is exceptionally simple, as I've just demonstrated, but it still teaches all these key components. Usually, teaching these points takes up at least the entire first day and some of the second day. On the second day, we make the game more interactive by covering user input, scoring, and sound effects. I show them how to now make a little character that follows around their mouse, and how they can then increment the score for every second the character survives without being hit by a ball. We also make the ball play a sound effect each time it bounces off the wall. And by the end of this session, they'll have a fully functioning video game as a template or guide for their final deliverable. For the purposes of this video, let me adjust some of the behavior here. Cool. Pretty trippy. Now once it hits 50, it'll stop creating these balls. So we should be able to sustain the application. Now currently there's no interaction, so the next thing I would do is create a little character that follows the mouse around and increment the score. Cool. As a final deliverable for this workshop, the students must choose a target market for a new video game of their own design. They must identify the needs of that population and then design a video game to fulfill those needs. Despite having worked with the GameMaker system, they still come up with really fanciful and very unrealistic designs, given their novice knowledge and skill in video game development. They're just super optimistic. or unrealistic. However, I think this is exceptionally valuable. As they begin to then develop their video game, they find out very quickly how difficult it is to get the game to do what they want it to do. They must then revise their design and try another route in order to still satisfy customer needs, but also come in on time for the deliverable. They also discover very quickly that 80% of the functionality takes about 20% of the time, and the other 20% can take the remaining 80% of the time, and if they're not vigilant, they may find themselves trapped in low-yield 20% functionality time-wasting efforts. So the students only have a few hours to both design and develop a usable product. And one thing we noticed was the tremendous amount of redesign and prototyping required to get things done in a usable format and in a timely fashion. The students often reported that what they developed was not exactly what they initially designed, but that it would do the job just as well. And this is excellent design thinking. They took a very complex and unstructured problem, designed a solution with what limited knowledge and resources they had, and then failed over and over through trial and error and prototyping until they finally arrived at a sufficient rather than optimal solution. I love the way that many of them had a feature they wanted to implement, and with their limited knowledge of the system, were then able to combine and recombine tools in order to get a workable solution. The final products they came up with, within only a few hours, are actually not too shabby, especially given they're not developers or designers, they're business students. There was quite a bit of variance, obviously, in the quality of these games, but some are pretty clever. Here are some examples. I have just online a few from a workshop several years ago in 2009. And here's one where you're a mailman and you're trying to get across the street to the mailbox, but you got to watch out for dogs on skateboards and dogs who haven't had their art or background removed. Pretty cool. There's a soccer game. You have to get the ball in the goal. Your character moves around and kicks the ball. This one is a pop the balloon as it rises. This is a platform game. This is the Mac guy. You want to catch iPhones instead of Androids. This is a clever one. You can play each note, and it determines if you played the correct note based on the piece of music currently showing, and there are many pieces of music, and this little bobblehead follows the note you play. And this is a fun little retro game, sort of like an old NES game. I'd love to show you this. Let me see. Open this up. Yes, run this time. I'm sure it's going to shout at me because it's a .exe. Oh, here we go. Let's see if we get any sound as well. Cool. So here I am. I'm this guy. He follows my mouse. And I'm trying to collect healthy food. Ooh. If I collect not healthy food, he makes a yucky noise. You can see my score is going up every time I get healthy food. There we go. And if I get unhealthy food, my score will drop. Pretty cool for, a couple hours. Very nice. Anyway, so the basic idea is that these MBA students go from possibly having never had to create and design something in this way, using such an unstructured approach to such an unstructured problem, all the way to being able to design and develop a video game that they're proud of and that is pretty cool and is an answer to a customer need. So that's it. I think teaching video game design to any students, not just business students, but to any students, young or old, creates a new way of thinking in them. They're able to think more designerly in order to come up with solutions rather than simply picking from the available options they have presented to them, which is often the case. As managers or as workers or whoever we are, we often get presented with option A, B, or C. Well, what about option Z or X? Can I just make that option? And that's what I'm trying to teach these students, is that you don't have to always take what you're given. You can design a new solution.